with, there it is. This meeting is now being live streamed. Got it. I'll just pop on here and see, there it is. Okay, and if anybody wants to make comments, we'll try and have a look at them and do what we can. Hello, my lovely friend from Oslo in Norway. How are you?
I'm good. I'm humaning a lot these days.
Oh, right. Same here, same here. They are tough times, I must admit. They're tough times. And it's almost like every single human being and animal and anything that's got any soul is being tested to the nth degree at the moment. That's how I feel anyway. But where I'm up to is I don't think it's being done to us. I think it's being done for us. When people say that, oh, it's not being done to you, it's being done for you. Well, at depth, I believe that. But when I'm going through stuff, I don't like it very much at all. What about you?
It's the same. And it's actually, I put out a video today where I talked a bit about that because I shared, a couple of like mystical experiences I've had. And I've been so hesitant to share those kind of things before. I don't think I've ever made a video on it. But today it was like, I had this moment where I had like such a like much deeper sense and experience of embodiment. So I could actually feel that presence within me. And, just that, having all of those perspectives at the same time of actually, from another perspective, I'm grateful for everything I'm going through. Yeah. Because I had one experience, which I shared a bit about in that video, of suddenly like having the experience of being a blue being in this body. It was like all of a sudden I was sitting right here and it was just like, oh my God, like I'm here, I'm in the body, I made it. It was like a really insane kind of experience. It sounds a bit weird, but then that excitement for being in the physical body and just for, watching the like physical humans moving around and like all the weird stuff I have in my kitchen that does weird things. And, it's just like bringing back that curiosity, I think can help us a lot of like, okay, I'm here, I'm in this body. There's a lot of weird things happening and I may or may not like it, but I'm here for it. Yeah.
I agree. I think there's lots and lots and more of these sorts of experiences. What I get is I get a big rush of power. You know what I mean? And as if this thing that comes up and through me and in me or whatever it is, it's always associated with these things behind me. That thing there like that. And that's why I feel, yeah. And we know that the new Chinese New Year, which is on February the 10th, right, is all associated with the wooden dragon, you know what I mean? But mine's not wooden in the slightest, and I think if it met the wooden dragon, I think that the wooden dragon would be up in flames in no time at all. But it could be symbolic of the talk that we're going to give tonight, I think, because the little presentation I've developed is called Venting the Spleen. And it's basically how indigenous people view the spleen in a different way than modern medicine does. It's got a much more depth, much more sort of a symbology associated to it. And I'm going to try and sort of discuss what I feel is meant by it, because I honestly think that closer than the heart, I think that the spleen is really where the soul works through and where there's a lot of information in there that comes from our deep past. And I think that's what I'm going to try and link it all together with tonight. But by all means, and I've done quite a long presentation, but I don't want to go too long because I think it's in our conversation that most of the information comes out in the moment, But yeah, what have I called it? Yeah, venting the spleen. And what I came to as I was writing it today, look at it, Joe. What do you mean by vent? And I thought, well, vent, it means to let the air blow through. And I thought, oh, wow, lovely. So there the breathing comes, breath of fresh air, and all about how the heart and the breathing and the spleen and the whole body system really is all about how we manage our energy. And that's what it's coming about with me today, is how do we manage the energy even the stuff that's buried deep down in our unconscious minds, how we can allow that energy to come up, and we can actually allow it to be regulated through an open and flowing heart and be constructive and not destructive, you know. And that's where I'm going with that. And even when we get hit by a big trigger, can we just stop, step back, allow it to process, and allow it to make its way out in a constructive, caring, and much more sort of efficient manner? You see, look, I'm like a priest again now, you know. Bless
I
you.
love that. I love that.
Oh,
Makes a
over
lot
to
of
you,
sense as
sister.
well. With the, you know, the spleen, like on a physical level, like the symptoms, if the spleen is, you know, out of balance, can be, for example, bloating, digestive issues, fatigue, these kind of things. And it really has to do with suppression of emotions, because if we are holding a lot of emotions, if we are not digesting our emotions, neither will our digestion system work well. So it's, and you know, the worry, insecurity, being afraid of, or you know, having like a connection, or thinking that the connection between love and trauma is like not possible to loosen up. Those are the things that are really like emotionally sits there, and therefore, as you say as well, the physical organ and the meridians and everything that has to do with the spleen has a lot to do between, or about the human body and the energy and the connection, the energy that we are, because it's what holds a lot of what is between us as a human, and remembering that we are so much more, because we are rejecting and not wanting to feel the emotions.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that we signed up. This is where I'm up to now, rightly or wrongly. This is how I feel. This is how I process information. That we signed up virtually to experience and feel every single human emotion possible. So we can't just have the good stuff, supposedly. You know, that emotion, we put the good or bad on it, but in the end, it's a feeling and it's an experience. And basically, it's an educational process, right?
Yes.
And it hurts like hell when you're going through it. But this, again, is about the sword of truth cuts both ways. It cuts, but as it cuts, it hurts like buggery. But that's all part of the release mechanism. That's how I see it. And when you're in the middle of it, it's easy for me to say this now because my mind's relatively clear. But when you're in the middle of it, it's really difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I think it's all purposeful. I think what the human race is going through now is that they've got to feel these things in order to process them, in order to understand them, because the end game, as far as I see it, is freedom of spirit. Christ, I am becoming a preacher.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
but
so
I couldn't agree more. I think we're coming to the point where it's, you know, to say it very clear, you're either feeling it or you're opting out. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think lots of people, including myself, because I was in denial for a long time, right? And denial, I like this. I didn't even notice, right? I was lying. That's what denial stands for. I didn't even notice I was lying, you know. And I didn't. All the people around me could see clearly. And I was the last person to know because I was hiding from facing myself.
Yes.
And the way I see this great shift that's going on now is it's like the mirror of self-reflection is getting closer all the time. So anything that's bouncing back is something that I need to accept, as you would say, radical responsibility for, because I chose it at some level.
Yes.
And it's up to me now to take the action to neutralize it, basically.
Yeah.
You know?
And accepting it doesn't mean that we like it.
No, we don't have to accept what's unacceptable. Certainly not. I think what acceptance is okay, that's the way that it is. What am I going to do about it? And then if you just, before you do anything, step back and look, maybe with an honest and faithful friend who's not going to give you advice, but allows you to talk it through, see where you're out of balance. And that's what I've put at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. It's really about how the masculine and feminine within us, not male and female, masculine and feminine, how we need to look is my masculine out of balance or is my feminine out of balance? Because it's almost like the game of reunification. Christ, there we go. You know, it's you know what? I think I'll play this back because it sounds quite good. So, should we get on to the PowerPoint then?
Definitely.
Okay, just that. Hang on one sec while I have a swig of me coffee because I don't half go on.
Oh, with a fox on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have foxes at the back door. They come for food every night. And
Oh,
our cat, our young cat, she goes absolutely bonkers, you know, with them. But it's very interesting. So let me just do this then. Share screen. Where are we going? Share screen. I'll go on to that there. And then I'll go on to that there. Right. Can we see that nice and clearly?
yes, I can.
Jolly good. And by all means, butt in and say, whoa, hang on, I want to talk about that. No problem. So I've called this the pranic triangle because that's what somebody asked us to talk about, the spleen and the energetic sort of relationship to the whole of the system. But I've talked about the venting the spleen. And what I've just said before is when I was writing it, I got venting, ventilation. So there's also something to do with the warmth and heat and hot and all that, you know. But there we are again with the professor and the doctor session 4. There'll be people from all sorts of universities looking your academic credentials up. You know, who is this professor?
Oh, don't they always say a bachelor?
Yeah, I'll say she's my guide and my mentor. And this is what it's basically all about, is this is my understanding of what this full spectrum human being is all about. Being subjected to all sorts of forces and flows. And here we are. There's the human being at the middle. And at the heart of that, at the core, which means heart, is the heart of the human. However, I think that's only just the beginning, because I think it's the heart of hearts that we need to start understanding now. And as I've mentioned, the model I work from is a 12-dimensional model, although we've got 15 dimensions, but 12 are actually possible in the human being. And that bit there in the middle, that's our access to the soul. And I honestly believe now that the access point to the soul, as the gates of the heart open up, we gain access then to the spleen. It doesn't sound very glorious, but I think the spleen has been pushed away and taken no notice of on purpose for a long time, really. So we look at these different spheres, and the spheres represent, there's 4 quadrants to these spheres, if you like. There's body, mind, soul, and spirit. And I think when we've finished and experienced all the episodes of all these dimensions here, we get full and true, complete freedom, and we understand cosmic consciousness as God might see it, I believe. And the way we do it is by opening the heart, the gates of the heart. And sometimes that hurts like hell. So that's that really. And this is the process, is from the I am approach, which is basically the start of creation. It's a dynamic process because it's always moving. That information then will be sent to our sun. So that's our star. But this is the great central sun, it's called. It then focuses through this sun here. And then it moves through our spiritual dimensions, which are basically to do with energy. When I say spirituality, I'm not talking religion, right? But if it means religion for you and all that sort of thing, and it works for you, that's great. You can do that. But this is the spiritual component, which is basically invisible energetics that actually influence us, mostly without our knowledge, until we get to understand it a bit more. So this is really tuning in now. Right. And what happens is this spiritual influx from our morphic fields works through our emotional body. And that's both subconscious and unconscious. And most of our emotions, 4/5 of them, are processed without our conscious awareness. However, our emotions, based upon instincts, represents how we feel and our mood state as well. Is this all right so far? Is it making sense?
Oh, totally.
Good.
I'm loving it.
Oh, good, good. And so our emotions then, which are really powerful, will then influence the way that we think. The way that we think will determine what we choose and how we choose to act or not act. and we'll work through our physical body. And if anyone wants to know the technical terms for these things, this is cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. There we are. There's a bit of education for you. And then what happens is we work through these here. So number one here is when we're born, it's only one way in here, and this is the physical body. So the physical body, you're either, you know, you can either be one thing or the other. So you're either a male or a female here. Now I'm going to make a clarification point here, because that's male and female, right? This is to do with your sex. It's not to do with gender. It's a completely different thing. And this might cause trouble, but I don't mean to cause trouble. I'm saying these things for clarification purposes. So this is your either or. You're either born a male or born a female. However, as we develop, we get to the next stage, and this is gender. So this is either masculine or feminine. It's not either, actually. It's both. Right, because in all human beings, there are masculine aspects and there are feminine aspects. And I think that's where a lot of misunderstanding comes from, because sometimes males are born males, they won't accept the feminine side of their nature. So they try all their life to be macho nature, and whatever society feeds them as this is how you should be as a male, they try and keep hold of that. And I think that's where a lot of problems arise. Once you can accept really that the human being, and I've just put a thing up about this, is androgynous, and androgynous means has got both masculine and feminine characteristics. And I'll go on further. This is that each of these here, these major spinal chakras here, can either be masculine dominated or feminine dominated. And once we start getting an understanding of that and we allow them to balance out, then we go to this one point here where this is where sacred reunification takes place. And it's a spiral dynamic. We start off slow, you know, and then we start moving up, because this is all part of an evolutionary process. Now, if we don't get it right, all we do is we keep going round and round and round and round in the same old circles. And if we can't accept this process, we just keep doing it for eons and eons and eons of time. So that's not evolution. That's basically just adapting really all the time. So that's that. And this is about, when I mentioned the sun, the energy of the sun, right, is sometimes known as prana, you know, but prana, that's an Indian term. I've taken this from a book called The Subtle Anatomy of Man. And I got that nearly 30 years ago on my first trip to Glastonbury. I didn't have a clue what I was going on about. I was getting all these feelings, and I was virtually dragged into this bookshop and picked this book out, and it fascinated me right from the first page. And so I've been learning more and more, and continue to learn about subtle and energies, you know, and I'm learning more and more. And I can see that I was totally disconnected from understanding how the energies of the body work, how the meridians work and all that. I didn't have a clue, didn't even know those names at the time, but I'm learning more and more all the time. So we have different levels of energy, and as we grow, it becomes more and more subtle. So these ones up here are really, really subtle, but they're associated with our connection, if you like, to universal consciousness. So that's something that I'm going to talk about here, is about prana and how a lot of these energies can be suppressed and repressed, and they're always trying to find a way out. So what they do is the prana comes in and it actually works through these different areas here. And these are the physical counterparts of the chakras. And I've gone over these before, so I won't go too much into them. But the first chakra, the root chakra, is associated with the adrenal glands and our fight and flight response. And then we move up then through the gonads and the sexual glands. That's the sacral plexus. Then we move up to personal power in society. Then we move up to the heart. And lots of people, as I mentioned last week, they get to this point here at almost like 3.5, 3.49, and they go back round again, and they go through their old thinking, and they keep thinking, well, I used to do it like this, I'll try it again. So they don't change their behavior, they just try and change the behavior of everybody else around them, and that will never work. Even though we might try the most manipulative techniques, or we might try forceful techniques, this is not about changing other people, it's allowing ourselves to be changed by this new energy that's coming in. Anyway, so most people know the chakras. And here they come, you know, they increase in frequency. But in actual fact, like I mentioned last week, it's not a linear progress. And I'll explain that as I go later on. So this is what we're looking for. And now on this one here, this is from traditional Chinese medicine. They believe, and I actually believe this too, they believe that the spleen, rather than the solar plexus chakra, right, that's where all the information's coming in. What I personally believe is, I think there's another one here, and the spleen, it's not a vital organ as such, but it's a it's all to do with vitality and energy, and how energy is distributed throughout the body. So it's not a major chakra as such, but I'll explain further. Because if the spleen is full of rubbish and blocked and full of what they call miasms from the past, then there won't be this complete flow. And so there'll be a misalignment and a misdirection of energy, which will make us feel crap. And we'll always be looking outside for answers, when the answer is go in and clean up your own act. Because in physiological terms, the spleen is the greatest cleansing organ of the body. It cleans away old red blood cells, but it's the seat of immunity as well. It produces lots of immune cells, and it works with the thymus as well, which is in the heart, to keep our immune system in good order. But any fear and any negative emotions like anger and resentment and frustration, all those things block the flow and reduce our immune system function. I hope this is making sense, because I'm rattling through it quite quickly. And therefore, if we haven't got a clean flow coming from the spleen, then our meridians get blocked, then you see. And it's our meridians that work with the chakras, that work with the nadis, which are like this tiny capillaries. And then it feeds our nervous system in a misdirected way. So I've shown this picture before, but these nerve endings here, these are electrical wires that carry electrons. And even right at the tip here, the tip of our fingers is supplied by the nervous system, right? And right at the tip of our fingers are little pressure receptors, heat receptors. It's a fantastic, fantastic mechanism. However, if the meridians are blocked because the spleen's not working properly, then we won't get the full information, and therefore we won't be able to see as clearly as we could possibly see. And so those there, we'll put that in the middle. Then we've got the way that the nervous system then feeds the muscular system. And this works through the connective tissue as well. And this is a story for another day, because this is fascinating. It's all to do with how the electrical signals and the electrons work through the structured water, which is another basic ordinary science won't accept that there's a fourth phase of water. But I know that there is, and I'm constructing more and more information just to show how this structured water carries electrical and magnetic signals through the body, through the magnetic system, the meridian system, through the nervous system to our muscles. However, if we're not paying attention to our body, we won't know that the body's misaligned. So therefore, as the signals get stronger, as the shift comes in, we'll start to feel more and more pain in our musculoskeletal system. And we can either go to the doctor and we can take tablets to anesthetize ourselves and stop the pain. That's probably not the best way to do it. It might be, if you're in real serious pain, it might be a temporary fix. But really, the true fix is to unblock the musculature, is to realign our postures, and maybe go to do things like yin yoga, hatha yoga, tai chi, qigong, connective tissue massage, exercise, hydration. All those natural things can help us to reset ourselves and allow the soul, if you like, to express itself fully. I think I'm on one now. I'll just keep going till I finish. So that's that there. And there's where the spleen is, you know. And this is the thing people say, and it's a colloquial expression, venting the spleen. It means to let your anger out, you know, and find some way, because somebody's offended us in some way and we need to fire it at them. Wrong. Because it's not what they've done to you. It's basically how you've processed the emotions, really. And if you do that and you vent the anger, right, generally speaking, most people who vent their anger, right, it comes back if they're sensitive, and it starts to eat away at them as well. So there's this, so the anger then builds up as we repress and try and do the decent thing, but it builds up and then it fires out again. So that's probably the wrong cycle. In this, I'm going to hopefully show you the way to take this repressed atomic energy, to open the gates of our heart, and to allow our heart to moderate. And by the way, you know, it doesn't mean that we can't stand up for ourselves. We don't have to accept what's unacceptable. So, but sometimes sensitive people who are more inclined towards the feminine, caring side, I'm not saying female, I'm saying feminine, we hold back on things and we become gross people pleasers, right? And we build energy up until a point where we can't take anymore. And if you don't know how to regulate it through an open and flowing heart, it can be very destructive. Anyway, I digress slightly. So there's where the spleen is situated. It's just on the left-hand side of the body, under the ribs, and it's really behind the sort of liver and the pancreas and the stomach, really. And it's pushed away, but it's important. And what I found out from radionics, and radionics is where we use, we can use pendulum dowsing and stuff like that to see where the energy is blocked. This is the splenic triangle, if you like, or the pranic triangle. This point here is at the back and between the shoulder blades. I'll explain this more. This is really the solar plexus chakra, and just over here is the spleen. Now, if the spleen is blocked, then we don't get the full flow of energy. And so we're always limited, really, in our full soul's expression. However, it's a bit like when you do have an argument and you really, wow, right, and you let it all go. Temporarily, you can feel free, right, until your conscience comes back to say, is that really the way to go forward? And then you start building it up. So the way to do it really is to start to moderate and soften, really, if you like, these destructive energies and use them for constructive, positive purposes. And it's really difficult when you're on one and you're in the middle of it. You can't think these clear thoughts, you know. But I've been shown and I've been taught and trained in that if I fire it at somebody else, right, and it's not a sort of, it's not justified. If I fired it at somebody else and it's not justified, I have to apologize for my side of the street in this. So this is always about cleaning our side of the street and allowing the other person to clean theirs. And as I was saying to Kristin before, is radical responsibility means owning what's yours and allowing others to own what's theirs as well, because it's all part of spiritual and emotional growth. So this is this pranic triangle. Now, what I'm saying is these aren't chakras as such. This is an energy sort of influx into the chakras themselves. It's quite difficult to get your head around this, but I'll try and explain it a bit more. So there's where the, let me just go back. There's where it sits, this energy triangle, not chakras, but an energy input, if you like, to the body. So that's where they sit. The reason it's on the other side there is because that's looking at the back and that's looking at the front of a person. Took me some technical skill that to turn that round, I have to say. I'm learning all the time. So there it is. There's the spleen chakra. And when it's whizzing and it's open and all that, what actually happens is the solar plexus can work with this here and it can go up to the heart. So it's a triangle. It can work both ways, but we get complete flow then of this energetic input and output of our energy. And then it works and feeds into the meridian and the chakra system then. Let me explain further. It's called venting the spleen in the nicest possible way. So there we have again, there's our pictures front and back. Oh, sorry, Kristin, what was that?
It's important the part you said about, like, for example, when there's anger, because when we're in the midst of it, like for me, repressed anger has been a huge thing in my life, because that's an emotion I couldn't really get in touch with, at least not on behalf of myself, which created a lot of physical pain, because in physical pain, there's always repressed anger. But really, when the emotion is actually coming up in a situation and the anger is triggered, it's really important to still feel it, even though we're not, like, if you are in the emotion and like in the triggered situation, we can have the awareness that, oh my God, I'm really triggered right now. I'm feeling super angry. Oh, hi, that actually means I will probably be projecting some bullshit right now. And then we can, just allow ourselves to feel that emotion without taking action on it until it passes. It's not about repressing it or saying that it's a bad thing and I should not feel this, but neither projecting it out. And that's really like what creates that movement, like you said, right? That it's just feeling it. I had an experience like a few weeks back where I was triggered into massive anger. And then I was first really happy because, hey, I'm feeling anger. This is really healthy for me because this has been so difficult for me my whole life. But then it was so powerful. And I was talking with a friend of mine and I was like, what am I doing with this? Like, it's so much what do I do? Because in the midst of it, I didn't remember how to really allow it either. And she was like, you just feel it. It will disappear. And I was like, oh, you're genius. And it's what I'm talking about all the time. But in the midst of it, I was like, it doesn't help to hit a pillow. Like, what the fuck am I doing with this? You know? But you just feel it. It will pass.
Perfect. I mean, I think this is not to deny the feelings, but this is transformation through an open and flowing heart. So it's not to waste the energy. It's actually to use all this atomic energy to take us forward. And I think people are being faced now, as I mentioned before. I think the great shift in consciousness that's coming in is actually, it means the mirror of self-reflection is getting closer. So we have to look at our part in it. There's a phrase that says, how did we set the ball rolling here? And basically it's because of our sensitivities, or mine, I'll talk about mine, because I was really sensitive, I became a gross people pleaser. So rather than actually stand up and be honest about how I was feeling, I swallowed all that shit really, and it repressed and repressed. But when I drank, it came out in such a powerful way. And this is not just about, this is about blockages at the chakras as well. And that's what I'm going to try and explain in a minute, is that sometimes we have to focus on a certain chakra, right? And we have to take an action that we were afraid of doing in order to neutralize what's gone in the past. And just to complicate matters as well, I think that the spleen is also the seat of Akashic records as well, and ancestral memories. So sometimes we can actually be reacting from our fathers, the sins of the fathers. Sin just means miss the mark or not taking the right action. The sins of the fathers and the fathers' fathers. So we could be actually bringing through their choices from all those years ago. However, we chose it. It's up to us to process it. And there's only certain principles of processing. And one of them is that if you're firing at somebody and you cause them harm, you need to apologize to them and do that, you know. And it's difficult. It is difficult.
And
I'll never forgive them. I'll never, you know, I might forgive, but I'll never forget, you know. No. So this is the bit, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for the golden alignment, really. And this represents the back and the front of a person. And I'm just going to try and show the anatomical locations of these things here. The heart chakra, not the heart chakra, the input of energy to the heart chakra. That's the important thing. This is an input of energy. It's not the chakra itself. It's the input of energy. It's between the shoulder blades, just to the left-hand side. And what people tend to do is, when they feel emotionally disturbed because their ego's under threat, we subconsciously tense our pectoral muscle and we bring our arm in there. And that's the first thing we do. And most people, like I didn't, had no idea at all. And that's why when people get heart attacks, they feel that radiating pain go up over their shoulder and down their arm. And this is all to do with musculoskeletal contraction and being tense in a fight and flight situation. And most people don't know this. And so I'm going to suggest some techniques as we go through this in our conversation later, how this may help people. So that's the one that's between the shoulder blades. Over here.
One thing, it's very interesting because that exact point, because I wasn't aware of this part that you're talking about now, but the first couple of years I channeled, because then it was just like something that sort of happened to me. I didn't have a control of when I went into a trance state or not. Then I felt the energy coming in that exact point. Now I normally feel it through my crown. But in the first couple of years, it was that exact point in my back. I was pointing at it, you know, like this is exactly where the energy is coming in. That's
Well, I
interesting.
think in some traditions they feel, in the Hebrew tradition, they feel they're called J seals or Jehovian seals that have been implanted upon it. But I'm not going there. You know, we can the techniques I'm going to show you. You can actually start to release these things anyway. So there's the first one, and at the front now we've got the solar plexus input, not the solar plexus chakra, the energy input to the solar plexus, and then we've got the spleen here. So these are all these situations where this triangular effect is really, and this is the connective tissue. These are the structures through which the meridians and the nadis work. You know, and I don't know whether I've mentioned these before, but this is where the structured water is. If the spleen's blocked, then we won't get free flow through all these. The pH of the body changes. Everything's connected. It's absolutely amazing. But maybe we can talk about these things at a later date. So that's that really. And just to go back is how does it obstruct us? Well, this on the left-hand side, I'm just going to try and explain this in terms of masculine and feminine, not male and female, as I say. That's where you determine whether you're male and female down this bottom end here. I won't go into the anatomical details of that. But this is the masculine side, and this is the feminine side. Now, the masculine side of all human beings' nature is associated with the external muscular system. It's the defensive system. It's necessary. It's equally as necessary as the feminine, but sometimes and the masculine is the bit that goes forward. If you want to know the proper word for this, it's called ergotropic. Ergotropic. And ergotropic means to take action and get the work done. Okay, so this would be St. Joseph the worker. You know, it's, that's March the 19th. That's the day I was born. And my mum and dad opened the prayer book and said, St. Joseph's Day. Thank God it wasn't St. Fanny's Day. That's all I can say. Anyway, this is the masculine side. It's got purpose, right? It's to do with the outside of your body and the stuff, so your muscular system is important. Okay. However, in these different chakras, not the first one, but these here, if it's too overpowered, it needs to learn to step back. Okay. However, on the feminine side, this is the fight and flight response. This is the rest and digest response. So if there's too much fight and flight going on, then the rest and digest doesn't get a chance. So healing mechanisms don't get a chance to relax, restore, revitalize, recuperate, blah, 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 blah. And in this bonkers world that we live in, we're driven to stay in our masculine side. And the masculine side has probably been driving us for eons and eons of time. And then we're therefore encoded in our DNA, right? Doesn't matter how many strands we've got. I think there's 12, but that's another story. Encoded in our DNA will be our ancestral reactions from the past. We have to work them out now, really, by finding out, by digging in deep, going into the spleen, feeling the energy, opening our hearts, and almost like asking our intuition, what do I have to do here? Now, if you've been feminine inclined in your emotional state as a gross people pleaser, the answer will come back. You need to stand up for yourself. Oh, you'll get one of them then. Oh, do I have to? Can't somebody else do it for me? No. This is about you taking the action, because that's the only way it will neutralize it. And not only will you neutralize your personal life, you will be also rewriting the history of your ancestral past as well. Don't you think this is good? It's really interesting, this,
Yes,
right?
and then
So
that will make it so that the overly, the overpowered masculine side and the muscular system can actually relax more, because it doesn't have to constantly be compensating for what the feminine side is not doing.
exactly, and that's why it works together. There's not really such a thing as masculine and feminine. That's just something that we've had to label, because everything's connected, really. But the human being needs to label and needs to number in order to get its head around stuff, really. But everything's working together, and really it's just a biochemical dance. It's a dance of biochemistry, but it's not really biochemistry. It's a dance of atoms. It's not really atoms, it's subatoms. It's not really that. It's energy and different forms and frequencies of energy. It's great, this. I'm really enjoying myself here. Right? So anyway, let's say, for example, in this department here, the fight and flight, that the feminine has to say, look, and not a little, no, I don't want that. It's me. Because sometimes the fire comes in and it really starts to say what it means. Because for a long time, it can approach it half-heartedly. That never works. It's got to be a full, clean no. And then the other side then, right, will have to think, hang on a second, maybe she's right, the feminine, and maybe I need to back off a bit. See, and what happens then is, then we start to become fearless then, and we start to move forward. Then we get into the area of sex then. Sometimes this one here can be too pushy. Sometimes this one can be a bit manipulative, right? So it's a game of life, you see. It's a game of life. So in the end, it's about becoming balanced in all these departments here. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But what actually happens is when everything's working together and there's harmony in all these dimensions of consciousness, that's where it's said to be in perfect balance. And that's really, I feel, what the human life is all about, is finding out what part of us we're responsible for and what actions we have to take in order to get to the 0 point, the neutral point, the perfect balance point, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Does that make sense so far?
It does. And what you said about the feminine, I so often see people talking about the dark feminine and really talking about that fire in the feminine energy, because yes, it's super nurturing, it's sensitive, it's intuitive, it's all of that, but it's also empowerment and a lot of fire. And the dark feminine is really that unbalanced or imbalanced feminine, which is manipulative, which doesn't stand up for herself, and need to go about it in different ways. The dark feminine is not that fire. The fire is a part of the divine feminine. That's really, really important to understand.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what's happening now is, right, and I think it's misunderstood by a lot of females, right,
Yes.
that they think that they have to become more masculine, right, and it's hard to explain that they feel that they have to become more male rather than masculine. It's difficult because this male, female, masculine, feminine thing, it's causing a lot of confusion at the moment, really.
Oh, it is.
But you're quite right. I mean, there is a toxic version of the masculine and there's a toxic version of the feminine. However, if we can understand what's being said here, right, and take responsibility, what actually happens is, as this central pillar and the magnetic and the energy starts to come in, it starts to draw in both sides. And that's what I honestly feel, through an open and flowing heart, or the Christ center, if you like. I think that brings the masculine and feminine together.
Yes.
Through hieros, gamos, in all the chakras and all the dimensions, really. Yes. So where does the spleen fit into this? Well, the spleen, really, it's not a vital organ physiologically, excuse me, but it is probably the most vital organ because it's to do with vitality. It's to do with prana reception and energy reception from the cosmos. That's then being magnified and focused through our sun. And it's really taking the information now that's coming from the sun, because that's what the shift is, in my understanding. It's more and more energy. So as more and more light waves come in at different frequencies, there's more information attached to that. And it's the soul that picks that up. And it's the soul that guides the growing process, really, for the human, because there's a cooperation and a collaboration between the soul and the human ego. And in the end, when the ego says, I surrender over to you, soul, show me how it's done. Well, the soul is growing as well, because that's processing as well. So there's different levels of soul progress as well. Fascinating, really. Let's see what's next. Oh, there we go. And so really, that's venting the spleen, but it's using this as a flamethrower to basically clear away the shit and so it can be used for positive purpose, but it can be used for destructive purpose. And I think now, if we're throwing it out for destructive purposes now, as the mirror of self-reflection, which is basically the karmic mirror, if you give it out, you're going to get it back pretty quickly now. And that's what I think is happening across the planet. If we just look outside and see what's happening, I think this disintegration that's happening is all for a bigger purpose. And finally, that's to me what this is all about. It's about balance. Does everybody have to do the same thing? No, because some people might be imbalanced in one chakra, right? And they need to work on a different chakra, so two people, even from the same family, might have different souls lessons to learn and stuff like that. So let me just see. I think that's it for now. Let me come out of there. So just while I'm doing it, so it's all about energy. It's all about different forms and different vibrations and different frequencies of energy, all carrying a different meaning. And sometimes we have to work on our top half of our body. Sometimes we have to work on our bottom half of our body. And sometimes we have to work in the middle bit. How do you know? You can't know until you sit, breathe, take a step back, open your heart, and say to your higher power or higher self, I don't know what to do. Can you please guide me through the next action I need to take in order to equilibrate and balance out these things? And then it might say, yes, do not allow that to happen again. Stand up for yourself. Or it might even say, right, even to the female, it might even say, no, you need to back off as well. And here's something I've learned is sometimes it's best to talk this through with somebody like a spiritual friend who understands principles and not personalities, because this is about principles. It's not personalities. It could be your mother, father, sister, brother, lover, granddad, and everybody else, right? If you've got to stand up for yourself in front of those as well, then so be it. So it's hard stuff, but that's the way I see it. What about you, Kristin?
Oh, I really, really agree. I think the whole, like, if we're talking things out with people, someone who's able to not get caught up in the story, because that's where our mind and our ego goes. It's like, yeah, but this happened and this person said this and this, I felt this and this person said he or she felt this, but that can't be true. Or, we're just getting caught up in all kind of details that aren't really important. The thing is to find someone who is able to just step back from the story, allow us to get out whatever we need to get out, and then give some pointers as to where we can shift some things in ourselves, because that's the only thing we can do. And when we shift things in ourselves, the external will shift, rather than trying to control everything in the external in order to feel better ourselves. That just doesn't work.
So do you feel then that there may be consciousnesses, right, outside our human self, right, that if we drop into and deeper into our intuitive self, and maybe in the area of the soul and an open flowing spleen and a de-obstructed spleen, do you think it's possible then that we may get inflammation, probably, yeah, information from outside the human that might help us on our journey?
Definitely.
Do you think that they speak in English, or do they speak in languages that that most people have got no idea about, yet it seems to have some impact upon the way we go forward?
Yes. It's funny actually, as you say that, because obviously we're talking about light language now. But when I got a question when we were in Houston and I did a trance channeling, about if it was difficult for me to channel in English when it's a trance channel, which is different than light language, obviously. But I've never channeled in Norwegian. It's always coming out in English, and I find it fascinating. And I've never asked why, because it didn't it's just like it's always been that way. And I think that's interesting as well. How something gets filtered through when it's a message in human words, which is different than the light language, because the light language completely bypasses the mind.
Very interesting, that really. Do you dream in Norwegian?
Oh, I don't know.
Ah.
That's interesting.
Well, I'm that sort of a person, interesting. You ask interesting questions.
Yeah, because I feel the energy. I can see the pictures. I don't know if I've never thought of it any language in my dreams.
That's interesting, because last night I had such a clear dream last night that I was in Liverpool, which is not far from where I live, over the water. I was in the city of Liverpool, in Chinatown. I went into a herbal shop, a herbal nutritional shop, and I asked them for some help in Chinese, right? Okay. And I was thinking in Chinese. So I'm in the dream. I'm here as myself, English Joe. I'm watching myself as Chinese speaking Joe, asking for some herbal remedy, right? And I came out of it this morning, woke up, and I thought, I wonder what all that means, because I can never interpret all this stuff, you know. But I know that there's lots and lots of stuff. And what I feel is that I think, depending on where I'm going to and which dimension or planet or whatever in me travels, I think it's speaking in different languages, and it's all sort of. Kristin, I don't know. I'm like finding out myself, you know.
Yes, but like the way it looks to me, like what I'm being shown when you say it, is that you're coming like closer and closer to the remembrance of what we term as past lives, which is really only like a frequency and an energy. And the more you are clearing in yourself and you allow, it's basically you having the space in your body for more of the energy that you are and your experiences to come into the body, the more your awareness as well will, gain that memory, as we call it. And you have, been there a couple of times before, which is part of, you remembering the information about the traditional Chinese medicine. Even though you're studying it now, the interest comes from you actually having mastered this before, and you're just sort of like remembering it. So I think that dream specifically, because I could see the layers as you were talking about it, it's almost like the memory of that life or those lives are here, and you are like, your mind is here, and they're starting to come into the same space. So you're starting to gain conscious awareness of it.
I thank you for that, and I understand, because anything I'm enthusiastic about is probably because I've come here to fill the gaps in, and maybe sort of dish out the information that's coming with it, really. Yeah. And it's exciting for me as well, because when you get one of them, oh God, that's the way it works. I get loads and loads and loads of those aha moments. I got a message for you about Xena, the warrior princess. I don't know what that means, but I'll allow you to work that one out for yourself.
What did you say about
Xena, the warrior princess? Right.
Ah.
Okay. So.
Thank you.
That's all right. No problem. I've got it clear as anything. Right. So, should we see if our friends want to talk to us?
Yes.
Okay, then.
Yes.
Let me just have a swig of my Fox coffee cup.
Oh, I have to change this sound thing, didn't I?
Oh, yeah, I haven't done mine. Let's see. I've put it onto on. Mine's on now.
It's on.
I don't know whether it worked last week. Am iesu chwyd y matnwch chwch. Har y sôn dyr y matwch si mai lo tam sgyrab di'r twch yma hada jyri. Sybr gan y gwrdd mysen dyr y bytnet ysyn ba. Hwrym dasio rwmatach. A mi a gwrdd sem tic syra. Rwmy gyda swm dyr cham o dyr yma sen dyr yma. Hwrdd sem graf neu chalish. Sbir a hwtad syr ma iawa. Iro subi amash. Hala tu sum I kora monjisha mori sadi wakwata. Ala kusma ruta mashetra bhondala ma kharasun terbetet nesu harum dakhne el ot es mahut.
Nelerheta arat nelerheta enta.
Hier dood shipment supra agrat nugotere horat sam tekratne shay holanyat asmu ut enacha.
Nelerheta warata nanta awanta arata allurt anta amba aiturunta anta.
Ironic sumna kurutz kot me kramat chichira samdrachne elat sunjwa. Mi sukala mishin, halusun yukurubishimila miachra, Holland zindela beklotishin tatne heles, Saluren etishma agrunt emission, Holem namtik subra. Akuna metiko aswalia. Nakaskori matro bashandre. Tassori yodun digora basantene, Korasantane, Gurumi Santana Caraxoni me, Shalamata Dohoro dotsumare nama. Arasso dimor, Horesip, Hula ya kula masaf yikula, Hula jacksna hola ya, Mulaya yosalia, Hula tatsnekra, Hula nyata, Halatunwa.
Eeritu anta ocerkuna eleritu amata ayartunta ampata churkuntata aitanta trunta amai ayat anta trunta amba ay ukwacha sharkuniratu amaleratu andaratu ay trunjurum naka runayaka konjuranayaka mayaka ayaka mayaka mayaka nayaka ayaka ayaka
Ako sin yikulu to shamte. Hala son yeri miko shere me kohe. Hatak ne korim tashe, Urantan iku oshmana.
Tretnelere nahjata erata ja onchoronnelere ta anta
Takashne.
kunta kile enta anta tunta trahanta tunta.
I love you.
I love you. I remember you.
And as they say in the movies, I see you. It is the way of water and the way of fire.
Yes.
Yeah. How lovely. I almost feel a neutralization of energies in that process.
Yes, me too.
And what I felt
Very,
was that the
very-
dragon was being tamed there.
Oh, it was being unleashed untimed.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. That's my feeling on it. Could be right, could be wrong. Doesn't matter. It's just that I could feel the power coming through. Maybe that was the spleen working in a proper way. I don't know. I get a lot of information from this, for a few days afterwards, and it seems to put things into place really. So it's unleashing the power, but in a constructive way.
Yes.
And what I got was consciousness, and expanding consciousness is nothing without conscientiousness.
Yes.
And that means a lot, because there are people who can wield this power in a destructive way, right? But it's almost as if in their journey of understanding, it will come back and bite them on the bottom quicker than they realize. I've got no idea what that means, but we'll have to wait and see.
And it's all about discernment, right? Both in how we use our own energy, and also how we interpret others' energy and actions and behavior, and how we relate to it, what we choose to, whether we choose to relate to it or not, really.
Oh, and I think, personal responsibility means that we are personally responsible for attracting to us the next thing that we have to experience and learn from. And I know that that's the truth. 100% responsible, even possibly before we came here. Although I have no proof of that, I don't have knowledge of it, but I just know that that's actually the truth.
Yes. In the
And,
beginning,
I'm not, sorry, I'm not trying to convince anybody else of that. It's just that's the way I see it. That's the way I feel it. And that's the way I know for me what the truth is, really.
yes, yes. Now, in the beginning, when I started understanding that, it did create quite a bit of worry in me because I would be like, yeah, but I'm not fully in balance. Does that mean I will just keep attracting shit into my life? Like I would be then afraid of what I would be attracting, which just kept me in a loop of being in fear, really. But what I am practicing and what is helping me a lot with that is really coming back to presence, because the deeper I can practice presence in my own life, the deeper I'm able to trust that presence no matter what shows up in my life. If I just, instead of going up in my mind and trying to find out how should I react, what should I think about this thing, all of those stories and narratives and things we have experienced and what others mean and all of that, it just evaporates. Just meeting it in presence, because then you can feel what you're actually feeling about something, then you can feel your intuition. And if you don't, in the moment, you just keep being in the presence, because that's where it will arise. And then
No,
we
I
don't have
agree.
to
I
have
agree.
all of that fear about what will come.
The feeling, and just to sort of recap before we go, I think there are simple techniques to vent the spleen. Because what will happen is, in my experience and the way it's almost as if when we make space in our connective tissue, so connective tissue massage is important. Even deeper remedial massage is important, but later on, as you sort of get to that stage. But things like hydration is important as well. But movement is so important. So all this somatic movement with yin and hatha yoga and all anything movement, simple things just to try and create more space, right? Even just putting our arms back, like this, and opening our sort of underarms and just twisting a bit to try and create more space. Anything like that at all to allow the energy to start percolating. And if it gets stuck somewhere, we can massage that area. So things like shiatsu, acupuncture, acupressure, all these things. Swimming is fantastic as well. Hot and cold therapies. There's so many natural things, and a lot of them don't need to cost much money at all. In fact, most of this stuff is free. They say that the best things in life are free, right? It's all out there, really. But more than anything else, and maybe next time we can talk a little about breathing, and breathing frequencies, because it's not just the frequency of breathing, how fast or slow you breathe, it's the quality of the breath as well. you
Mm.
know and if anybody wants to look at stuff, I've learned a lot of stuff from Mantak Chia, and it's called the fusion of the five elements. And I've been getting all week is, Joe, you are the fifth element. Tell them all, that's you lot out there, tell them all that they are also the fifth element, right? And that will work through the heart of hearts to rebalance everything.
Mm.
So there's loads and loads of stuff out there, and sorry for the lecture there, but I think it's just important that there's stuff to hand and at hand that we can do. Even the simple stuff to start going forward will start the process off much more readily and rapidly.
Oh, definitely. And just, moving, just intuitively. If we want to, for example, connect to the spleen, just stand on your floor, breathe, connect in, and set the intention to connect. Now I want to connect with my spleen. I am connecting with my spleen. And then just have the focus on, because now after this presentation, you know anatomically where your spleen is. Put your hand on it, just breathe into it and start connecting with it and see how it wants to move. Because then you will probably, your mind might tell us that we are, doing weird things or something, but it knows how it wants to move the energy. Simple things like that can be very very helpful.
And I've just got again is the meditation that I do, that cradling the sacred child. It's just clearly come to me that one hand's over the heart and one's actually not over the stomach, it's over the spleen, right? And that's why when you're holding that sacred child, not only can you listen in and resonate to its heartbeat, right, to your heartbeat, so allow those to synchronously attach to one another, but also it's a smile from the spleen that will start to unlock all that stuff. And the personal stuff that you've pushed down will come up in bubbles. Feel it, breathe it away, allow the next one. And then it almost like becomes a tidal wave then. And the more we have our heart open, the more we can let it go in expression, and the more we'll understand things as well. And, you know, I think that you have to come to your own understanding as it emerges, because I think that your mind will open and you'll be able to see, right, I see that now. Yes, I did that last time, but maybe I need to do the opposite this time, and so on and so forth, really.
Yes. And it's the best feeling, isn't it, when you get an epiphany? I just love that.
Yeah.
That's my
And I
drive.
think there's so many more, isn't there? They're just popping up like little light bulbs all over the place now.
Yes.
Right, darling, that's it. I'm off. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, everybody, for watching. If by all means, put some stuff in the comments. Please don't messenger me or Kristin, because, you know, I think we're busy. We're busy. So if you put stuff in the comments,
Yes.
we'll try and look through them and maybe cover them in the next one. Are we going to do a next one, do you think? Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'll be like on my last legs before we finish, you know what I mean?
Oh, you'll have to keep going.
Oh, yeah, we'll keep going. All right. And so, good night and God bless from him behind me there, right?
Oh,
And see you all next time.
good night. Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.